I voted for Donald Trump.
I voted for Donald Trump.
I have never voted for a Democrat before, and you're the first one I've ever voted for, and
I am
so
honored.
freaking pumped. So,
Thank you.
well, I guess today was the first time I've ever come to any rally whatsoever.
Took my son to a Trump rally in Houston, Ted Cruz rally in Lubbock, Texas. So we were both married women previously, had kids with our ex-wives. Now we're two married men, ranchers in West Texas. We have 4 kids between the two of us, and just the current state administration and state judicial system just doesn't protect our rights the way I feel it should.
Was talking earlier about equal treatment under the law for everybody. It's really got to be for everybody. I just want to make sure that everyone is treated the same in Texas, and we're not there yet, but we could get there, and I think this election could be part of it.
Abbott has just moved so far radically to the right. I just can't go to sleep at night voting for those type of beliefs. We're both farmers and ranchers in the Texas Panhandle. Have voted nothing but Republican all of our lives, and for the first time, we're voting for Beto.
Let me just say that of all the races I've followed in the last few years, no one has been putting in the work like Beto O'Rourke. For years, literal years, while other politicians post tweets onto Twitter and do the occasional rally, Beto's been posting videos of himself knocking on doors, meeting voters face to face, and holding intimate town halls. If and when Texas flips blue, it'll be because of the work put in by people like Beto. And let's be clear, Beto's job right now would be much more difficult if the current governor, Greg Abbott, hadn't made his disdain for his own constituents abundantly clear. This is a guy who's overseen a complete failure of the Texas power grid, where hundreds of Texans froze to death and 5 million Texans went without power. And Abbott's priority? It's declaring that gender-affirming medical treatment to trans youth constitutes child abuse under state law. It's imposing a bounty law against women who are seeking reproductive care. It's holding three special legislative sessions to pass a voter suppression law. It's a lunge to the far right, topped off by an effort to entrench their own power because they know how unpopular their agenda actually is, so they wouldn't dare allow themselves to be held accountable by the voters. But sure, Party of Patriots. Got it. And it's not just legislation where Abbott is showing how unfit he is for the office he holds. Texas has been ground zero for shootings, which Beto made clear when he interrupted the perfunctory photo op of a press conference that Abbott decided to hold to give himself political cover.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sit down. You're out of line and an embarrassment. Hey, sit down and don't play this stuff.
Shooting is right now, and you are doing nothing.
No, he needs to get his ass out of here. This isn't the place to talk this over.
This is totally predictable when you...
Sir, you're out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Sir, you are out of line. Please leave this auditorium. I can't believe you're a sick son of a bitch that would come to a deal like this to make a political issue. It's on assholes like you. Why don't you get out of here?
The fact is that in Texas, since Greg Abbott became governor, there have been mass shootings in Fort Hood, Dallas, Texas First Baptist Church, Santa Fe, El Paso, Midland, Odessa, and Uvalde. And of course, Abbott knows how poorly this reflects on him, which is why he had promised to act to curb gun violence. In 2019, when a shooter killed 23 and injured dozens more at an El Paso Walmart, Abbott swore to do, quote, everything we can to make sure a crime like this doesn't happen again. His lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick, said he was willing to, quote, take an arrow from the NRA in order to pursue stronger background check laws. And yet, here we are, 3 years later, and Dan Patrick took no arrows from the NRA, passed no strong background checks law, and Abbott didn't do much of anything to make sure that a crime like this didn't happen again, as we sit here now in the aftermath of the most recent school shooting, this time where 19 kids and 2 teachers were killed. I should note that while these Texas Republicans were making their grand promises to curb gun violence with legislation that never actually materialized, they did manage to pass a few major pieces of legislation that actually expanded gun rights, like passing a permitless carry bill, allowing most Texans to carry handguns openly in public without any training or permits, a move that since resulted in major warning signs from the police. It was already legal for long guns like rifles and shotguns, meaning now effectively all guns would be covered by permitless carry in Texas. They passed a Second Amendment sanctuary state law to shield Texas from any federal gun control laws, and they passed a law that would eliminate the governor's power to ban gun sales during an emergency and make it legal for gun owners to bring weapons into their hotel rooms. In other words, these Republicans, like Greg Abbott, saw these shootings happening across the country and decided, you know what we need? We need more unfettered access to guns. We need fewer permits. We need fewer background checks. Oh, a shooter slaughtered 60 people in a Las Vegas hotel room? How about we make it legal to bring guns into hotel rooms? So when it seems like Abbott and his supporters really don't care, that's because that's exactly who they are, and that's who they've always been. One point that I found especially impactful from the two Trump supporters is when they explain how far to the right Abbott's moved, and that's a sentiment that's felt across the GOP by voters who've witnessed this unrelenting lunge off the cliff. And let's just remember for a moment what the Republican Party used to support. They claimed to be the party of family values. Then they turned around and supported Donald Trump, the guy who paid off porn stars and escorts for affairs. They supported Roy Moore, an accused pedophile. They supported Matt Gaetz, who's under investigation for child sex trafficking. And they supported Eric Greitens, who was accused of tying his hairdresser up and forcing her to perform oral sex. But sure, party of family values. They claimed to be the party of states' rights, and then during the 2020 election, while trying to illegally subvert the election results, they all signed onto the Texas lawsuit to discard the election results in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. I guess those Republicans are all for states' rights, except when those other states don't follow the will of their own states. They claim to be the party of fiscal responsibility. And then what happened the last time the Republicans took power? They added $7.8 trillion to the debt. And for what? A tax cut that overwhelmingly favored millionaires and billionaires. A tax cut that would ultimately dry up federal revenues, leading the U.S. to lose more tax revenue than any other developed country in the world in 2018. And so when the pandemic hit and our deficit skyrocketed, now you know why. Because God forbid we don't burn the entire economy down to coddle millionaires and billionaires. They claim to be the party of jobs. Now, not only did Trump lose the most jobs of any president in modern American history, but in my entire lifetime, there's not been a single Republican president that's created more jobs than a Democratic president. Republicans still parade themselves around as if they somehow got this monopoly on job creation, when not only do they not have a monopoly, they don't have any winning stats to point to against Democrats. And finally, Republicans claim to be the party of the police. And yet, well, I'm not sure I have to remind anyone what happened on January 6th. Pretty sure it was only one party supporters who managed to bludgeon police officers, and if memory serves me correctly, it wasn't the Democrats. So I know that there are probably a broad range of ways to support the cops. Pretty sure trying to murder them isn't one of them. So look, Republicans will pretend that Democrats are extreme or radical, but that's just to compensate for the fact that the only extreme party here, the only party that stripped women of their bodily autonomy and coddled millionaires and billionaires and pretend that climate change doesn't exist and refuse to take action in the face of gun violence, is the Republicans. So when they point their fingers at the left, that's nothing more than projection. Because remember, every accusation is a confession. So if you're wondering why Texans are flipping from red to blue, it's because they recognize the abject danger posed by someone like Greg Abbott. Someone who's used his position of power to attack the most vulnerable, also that he can feel powerful, so he can get his 5-minute cable hit on Fox. And meanwhile, it's the Texans who are the ones feeling the brunt of that abuse. They're the ones left freezing to death, the ones who've been stripped of their bodily autonomy, the ones who've been put in immediate danger as members of the LGBT community. So if you live in Texas, if you have friends or family in Texas, you have the power to ensure that Greg Abbott's self-serving reign is over, and to finally elect someone in Beto O'Rourke who cares about the people he's running to serve. Before you go, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to my channel. You can click the thumbnail right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work even further, the best way is to subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. There you can check out my interviews with major players in the world of politics, including President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Jamie Raskin, and so many more. Plus other interviews that live exclusively on the podcast. That link is also right here on this screen, or just search No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen wherever you listen to podcasts.